Welcome back to Uptime.com and our video on Uptime.com's REST API. The REST API offers the functionality of the Uptime.com UI with the advantage of programmatic execution of creating checks, setting tags, reviewing alerts, and more. This will allow you to integrate any of your internal processes to also read, update, and create Uptime.com checks as you go. By navigating to Settings and API in your account's sidebar, you are provided with your API token, an example of a simple curl request, and useful links to our documentation and changelog. Clicking the documentation link will provide you with each of the endpoints available to you, their schema, and example response data. Additionally, you can test out each endpoint directly from the documentation page to ensure you understand precisely how each endpoint works and the responses and output you can expect when using the API. Operations performed using the REST API are a two-way street. Provide the endpoint with a request, and you will receive a response in raw JSON format due to its ability to be easily manipulated. Today, we will go over utilizing the REST API to set up a check, a contact, and review an alert. To do this, we will make use of the Postman software to ensure each step is easily interpreted. To begin, let's first add our Uptime.com API token to our Postman vault. It is best practice to ensure that all API tokens or otherwise sensitive data is hidden from outside view. First, navigate to your workspace and select the lock in the bottom right corner of your window. Here, we are provided with a list of secrets in key value format, similar to providing headers in a curl request. In the case of our Uptime.com API token, the key will be authorization while the value will be token followed by your API token as seen on the API page of your Uptime.com account. To finish up this process, please specify the allowed domains that this token can be used with by adding Uptime.com to the allowed domains field. Doing so keeps your secret more secure by limiting where it can be used locally before the request is made. Once completed, let's head back to our workspace and select New, followed by HTTP. This will provide us with a basic setup to begin making requests to the REST API. First, we will need to select the request method and URL endpoint that we want to use. For our first task, we will be creating a new contact to receive any alerts issued by our checks. To do so, we will be using the post method along with the contact endpoint. Copy the URL for this endpoint and paste it into the address bar for Postman. Expanding this endpoint will show some example JSON to add to your request. Additionally, you can find the schema along with any required fields for your request. Please take note that fields with a red asterisk are required fields and must be present in the request data. Failing to include all required fields will provide you with an error such as this. Secondly, we need to set the authentication for our request. This is where the secret that was added to the vault is used. Under the Authorization tab, directly below the address bar, select the API key auth type. In the key field, add the key that you chose for your secret. In the value field, you will need to add the key value pair for your secret as shown here. Take note of the format for your value. Enclosed in double curly braces, your key will always be vault. Your value will be the key chosen in the key field. In this case, authorization. The Add to dropdown should have the header option selected. Next, select the body option. This is where we will post our data. By default, this option is set to none, but for our purposes, we will set this option to raw. Once set, we are provided with a drop-down menu of data formats. We will make use of the JSON option. In the text editor, paste the example JSON data from the REST API documentation and fill in your data to any fields that you may need. Please remember to include any required fields provided by the schema. Now we are ready to send our request. Select the Send button next to the address bar in Postman to send. Once sent, you will receive a response from the server showing either an error or the response JSON showing the information for your new contact. We can see now, within our Uptime.com account, that we now have a new contact created from the API. Our next task is to create a new HTTPS check with our contact associated with it. Our auth settings will be the same as our last request, so we do not need to change them. Following the same process as creating a contact, we can copy the add HTTP endpoint from the REST API documentation and paste it into Postman along with the example JSON data. For ease of understanding, we've removed any optional fields for this demo. Please still include any required fields in your request. In the Contact Groups field, let's specify the contact that we created in our first request. While it is not marked as required within the schema, it is important to note that you will need at least one location associated with each check. You will need to use the names as seen in the location column of the public probe server list within your uptime.com account in string format. Failing to include at least one location in your request data will give you an error such as this. To add more than one location to your request, please use a comma-separated list to define each location. Once complete, select the Send button again to send your request. If your request was successful, you will receive response data based on the check that was created. Take note of the PK field. This is the unique identifier for your check and will be used in multiple methods to retrieve and update the check. Finally, let's review an alert that was received from the check we created earlier. In this operation, we will use the alerts endpoint. There are a few important items to note with this endpoint. Notice that, with this endpoint, the REST API documentation states that this is a GET request instead of the POST requests that we had been using up until now. Additionally, you will need to specify the PK or unique identifier for the check that you would like to see alerts for in the endpoint URL as a parameter. Once filled in properly, we can send this request as is. Since this is a GET request, there is no data to send to the server. Again, we can see confirmation that our request was successful once the response data has been sent back to us from the server. In the response data, you can see the information associated with the check, such as the check PK, the check name, the check address, and the check state. Below this information are the individual alerts for this check, detailing information such as the affected location, the error message or output, and the time of the alert. The Uptime.com REST API can be used to automate features in your account like reports, check and contact creations, and to view alerts as we've seen. But it doesn't stop there. There are dozens of endpoints that can help you improve your workflows and become almost entirely hands-off with your monitoring. For more information, check out the rest of our video library or reach out to us directly at support@uptime.com. Thanks for watching.